Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup for Tuesday, August the 23rd, here on bet.nola.com. I'm Zach Ewing with Spencer, the Guru Urquhart. We are here. We're getting close, man. It's football season's coming. Fantasy football season. Some of you probably have already drafted. Others have drafts coming up this weekend, maybe Labor Day weekend. Tell you what we're going to do is we're going to help you get ready for those. We're going to dig into some draft strategies today, look at some sleepers, look at some ways you should build your team, look at guys that, Spencer, you're targeting and guys that you should avoid. And then next Tuesday, our last show before the NFL season starts, will be our full draft preview show. We'll dig back into the rankings. We'll take some questions. We'll do all of the above. If you do have questions, you can leave them below in the comments. We will get to them live here on the Fantasy Roundup. But in the meantime, Spencer, it's time to dig in.
Yes, sir, Zach. I can't wait to really get into this, man, because this weekend's, I know a lot of y'all have drafts. So, y'all in the comments, let us know what questions y'all have, who y'all are thinking about targeting, who makes y'all nervous, because this is the time where you got to decide which players are you rocking with and which players are you staying away from. So, yeah, I can't wait to get into that to let y'all know who I'm targeting and who I'm avoiding, and y'all can do what y'all want with that. But hopefully y'all can see where I'm coming from with these, because I feel pretty confident that a lot of these are league winners or are on the other side of the coin, guys that could cost you your league.
I'll tell you what, if y'all are interested also in joining a bet.nola.com fantasy football league this year, drop it in the comments. If we get enough interest, we'll put that together. You can play with Spencer and I. We'll go through the standings every week here on the show. And we might even be able to get some cool prizes from Caesar Sportsbook, our presenting sponsor. No guarantees, but drop in the comments if you'd be interested. Trav says, "Who dat, everybody?" Got a couple of things to talk about. But first, Spencer, I want to kind of get into some general draft strategies. You put together 5 tips for people. This is for, your standard, let's say, standard 10 to 12 team league with just your regular roster spots, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex. And what you say now, obviously strategies can differ, but this is what you recommend, especially for people who are just kind of getting into this. And number 1 on the Guru's draft tips is get your running backs early.
Most definitely. Yeah, I would say at least 2 in the first 3 rounds, because, man, that position, it dries up fast. I mean, all of us experienced fantasy players know that. But, yeah, for those just getting into it, you got to target a position early. I hear all these analysts saying, 0 RB, hero RB, all these crazy strategies, which, I mean, in the perfect circumstance, they might not be too bad. But for the vast majority of leagues, don't get crazy with all that. Just stick to the script and take two big dog running backs in the first 3 rounds, because once you get down to those mid rounds, even like the rookie Breece Hall, who I'm pretty high on, like last night, he played in the preseason. Michael Carter did, and there's a chance Michael Carter might start off the year as a starter. So if you've got 2 of those big running backs, like I say, like Christian McCaffrey and Javonte Williams, you won't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I'm actually a proponent of the hero RB strategy, Spencer, and I get what you're saying. I think one thing, if you're going to do hero RB, or especially if you're going to do 0 RB, you're going to have to be prepared to be very active on the waiver wire. And if you're not prepared to do that, then it's a bad idea. You better get your 2 studs. The thing that's risky about this strategy that you're talking about, where you make sure you go get them, is, if you have injuries, they can really, really hurt your team right off the bat. But that's a chance you take in fantasy with any position. And so, yeah, the safe thing, get those running backs early. They're not the most important position in the NFL anymore, if they ever were, but they certainly are still the most important in fantasy football. Johnny Culpepper says he's got a draft tonight, picking number 12. Who should I pick? Well, what do you got around 12? Are you still looking at running backs at that spot, Spencer? Or are you into some of the top wide receivers there if the top 6 or 8 running backs are off the board?
Yeah, I would still go at least 1 running back. Probably, hopefully a guy like DeAndre Swift would fall, or Joe Mixon. But I would, I'd take one of those, and then one of those elite receivers as well. Like a Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs. Ideally, it would be like Justin Jefferson. He usually doesn't fall that far, though, or Jamar Chase. They're usually gone within the first 8 picks, as well as Cooper Kupp. So I would say get a all those top 5 to 6 receivers, as well as a top 10 running back. And once it gets back to you, at least your top 2 are pretty well set. You never know what could happen. Hey, you might get lucky and have like Javonte Williams fall to you, or Saquon, and then you'd really be set. But even if not, you'll still, if you can lock down the 12 and 13 picks, you'll at least be, in a pretty good spot to start out.
Very good. By the way, if you are interested in a Bet.NOLA Fantasy League, it would be free to enter, and we'll get some prizes, hopefully, from Caesar Sportsbook. We'll talk about the standings every week on this show. Uncle Big Nick says he's in. If you'd like to be in, drop it in the comments, and give us an email address or a Twitter handle or some way to get a hold of you as well, so that we can invite you to this league. If we get enough interest, say 10 people, we'll get it done.
Yeah, I'll have to get Jim in there too.
Yeah, and we'll get Jim Derry in there. There's not a lot of notice at this point, but we'll do it today. If we can get that interest in, we'll get a draft set up in the next week or so, and we'll talk about it here on the Fantasy Roundup every single week, our listener league. Tip number 2 from the guru: wait until round 7 or later for your quarterbacks. Now, I don't know how you feel, Spencer. If you got a spot of Josh Allen in the 5th or 6th round, maybe you take it. I don't think you would, but generally you're saying wait on those quarterbacks.
Right, yeah, because generally Josh Allen's going in the 3rd round, so that's why. I mean, yeah, if he would fall to 5 or 6, he might have to make an exception for that, but odds are he won't be there. So, I mean, with the way most drafts go, I would wait till round 7 or later, because a lot of times in round 7 you could get a Joe Burrow or a Jalen Hurts. A lot of times that'll fall to round 7. And to me, those guys aren't too far off from the Josh Allens, Justin Herberts, Patrick Mahomes, and you can get them a lot later. So I feel like that's the move usually. But if there's like a big run on QBs, then I'm still not panicking. Let's just say all those are going: Hurts, Burrow, Russell Wilson. Maybe even someone might pull up Aaron Rodgers. You probably think, oh man, I don't have a quarterback. Well, there's still a lot of value to be had later with guys like Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, even Trey Lance, like these young guys, Trevor Lawrence, guys that could break out. You could pair up a young guy with a veteran, and I feel like you could still be in pretty good position even if you don't have one of those elite quarterbacks. Of course, this is single quarterback. If you're in super flex, definitely target the position early, but for most leagues, I would wait for QB.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. If you are in a super flex or a 2 quarterback league, are you taking a quarterback in the 1st round for sure?
Not for sure. 2 quarterback, yes. Like if you have to start 2 quarterbacks, I'd say yes. But if it's super flex, where that 2nd spot doesn't have to always be a quarterback, I would say, I'd probably say unless it's one of those like top 4 or 5, I probably wouldn't, honestly, because I feel like a lot of times the quarterbacks go a little too high if it's the regular scoring where they only get 4 points for a passing touchdown. If it's like quarterback premium or to where you have to start 2 quarterbacks, and yeah, but if it's like the traditional super flex settings, I wouldn't feel obligated to take one in the 1st round.
Probably first 2 rounds, though. You're going to have to get one early in that situation, because they will go fast. But in traditional fantasy football setups, you're saying wait till round 7, unless maybe one of those top couple of dogs slips a round or 2, then you could think about it. But otherwise, wait. Looks like we got a couple of bites on the Fantasy Football League in the comments. Uncle Big Nick, we did not need your info. We got all that. Tommy Mello's in. That sounds great. We get a few more. We will set up that Bet.NOLA.com Fantasy Football League, and hopefully get some prizes from Caesar Sportsbook. So let us know with your contact info in the comments if you'd like in, and we will get a hold of you this week and probably do a draft this coming weekend. Other than that, let's move on to number 3, Spencer. The Guru's draft tips. Number 3, don't be afraid to reach if you really like a guy.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, certain players come to mind, Travis Etienne, Gabriel Davis, AJ Dillon, these guys with super high upside. If you want to get them, I mean, you're going to have to probably reach a round or 2 compared to where they normally go, because especially if you're in leagues with savvy players, because if you don't, then the other savvy players are going to scoop them up. You're going to be like, damn, then you're going to be without any upside a lot of times, because like there's usually at least 2 or 3 sharps in every league that tend to get these guys. So like I would try to get ahead of that and I'm not saying to make every pick a swing for the fences. You would definitely want to still have a good amount of floor safety, safe veteran type players, but don't be afraid to take a Travis Etienne or a Gabe Davis. I'm just using them as examples because they're guys that, yeah, they don't have like that great of a track record. They're young, but man, do they have upside. They could be the kind of guy, if they deliver, that's the kind of stuff you need to win your league, because then you'll really be able to get an elite player without having to pay up that elite draft capital.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're drafting on ESPN or Yahoo or one of these sort of traditional platforms, there's going to be a list of average draft position, ADP, for every player, along with Yahoo's rankings or ESPN's rankings or what have you. And sometimes those things can trick you, right? I mean, you look at them and, oh, hey, I really want Travis Etienne, but he's listed in the 120s. I can wait on him. I don't need to, he'll still be there in 15 picks when my turn comes back around. If you like a guy, you've got to be the one to go get him, even though it's only pick 97 or something, and he's listed at 120. You better go get him if you want him, because this is it. Now in an auction, it's totally different. You wait. In fact, I would wait on guys you really want and let everybody spend their money. But in a draft, you got to go get him if you know you want him. Last year, Jamar Chase was that guy for me. I loved Jamar Chase. He was going in 7th, 8th, 9th round. I went and grabbed him in the 5th round. I knew I wanted him, went and got him. And it paid off. And if you have a guy like that you feel strongly about, reaching is not necessarily a bad strategy. You're not a square for reaching for the player you want.
Facts. Yeah, you definitely don't want to get left behind and end up with just like, I don't know, somebody you don't really want. There are sometimes where you gotta take players you don't like, but you gotta have some of your guys too. You can't be like, oh, I got value on every pick. But I mean, sometimes these players slip for a reason, just because of players slipping that's done well in the past doesn't necessarily mean that it's like, there's usually a reason they're slipping. There's usually a reason for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now one thing I like to do is, obviously things change in a draft, but go in with a plan, at least for the first 6 or 8 rounds. If you're picking in the middle of the round, and so you're every 10 or 12 picks sort of steadily, you can do it for every pick. But if you're picking at the beginning of a round or at the end of a round in a snake draft, so you've got 11 and then 14 and then what would it be, 25 and 28, and do it 2 picks at a time. Okay, here's the guys for these 2 picks that I'm interested in for round 1 and 2, for round 3 and 4, for round 5 and 6, and have that plan, and then scratch them off as they get taken. And that way, at least for the first 6 or 8 rounds, that you'll end up with somebody you like. Be realistic about who will be there, but go in with a list of people. Don't go in. If you go in without a plan, you're going to end up like Spencer said, where your clock's ticking down and there's 3 guys you're not really sure,
man,
and you're searching through the magazines and you're, oh God, what do I, and then you just pick one. You don't want to do that.
Give me an upset stomach right now just thinking about that.
if it's round 15, like, okay, we've all been there. Like, sometimes that happens, but don't do that for the guys who are going to be your starters.
Yeah, no, right. You don't want that. You don't want that. Not on ESPN,
no.
It does that where it's like, damn, what do I do?
You better have somebody in your queue. You don't you got to have a plan. Have a plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tip number 4, Spencer: focus your bench picks on running backs and wide receivers. That's where you want your depth.
Correct. Yeah, because I notice a lot of people, especially people that are just starting out with fantasy, they feel the need to have a backup every position. And I mean, I know some leagues require, if you're in a league that doesn't require that, like vast majority of leagues, don't feel obligated to take a backup tight end when you got a guy like, for example, Romeo Doubs sitting there in the 15th round, a high upside rookie. Don't pass on that high upside rookie. So I got a backup tight end. I got Noah Fant, backup time, and they have no upside. If there's a guy with no upside, then I would pass on the backup, wait till your starter has a bye week, and then address that backup rather than taking just a bleh backup and then passing up on a rookie that has the potential to be a starter for you.
And some of these strategies go in tandem, right? Like waiting until round 7 for quarterbacks means you're not going to have a star quarterback and feel like you have to handcuff him or feel like you have to. You're just going to have kind of a mid-level quarterback, QB 10, QB 11, something like that. And honestly, if you have one of those guys, unless they end up being a great pick, in which case that's a good problem to have. But if they are just sort of a middling lower end QB1, when it comes to their bye week, just drop them and pick up QB13. I mean, there's very, very little
Yeah.
difference, and play matchups the rest of the year, and play quarterbacks who have a good matchup. And by the way, then you get these star wide receivers or potential star wide receivers and running backs as backups, and that's where you want to have your depth. So that's tip number 4. And then finally, don't draft your defense or kicker until the very end of the draft. The one place of pushback you may get here, Spencer, is some people like to take the defense a bit earlier. Although I would say this particular year there isn't one defense where you're just going, I've got to have them. You know, they're just so volatile. You just the number 1 defense and the number 10 defense, and even especially with kickers, number 1 kicker and number 10 kicker, it's anybody's guess how they'll end up.
Right. Yeah. This year's number 1 defense, the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, they're an elite defense, but are they really enough better than the rest of the pack to justify taking them in the 10th round? I don't think so. I just don't think like you said, there's no defense that's enough ahead of the pack to justify it, especially with the way most leagues score defenses. I don't even know why defenses are still a thing in a lot of leagues, because most of them, they only get like, even if they have a really good week, they only get you like 10 points or something. Like, I mean, I know some leagues where the defenses mean a little more. You might want to consider them in like maybe the 12th round, but with the standard format, they've devalued defenses to where it's just, to me, it's not worth even drafting them. If you can avoid drafting them, like I know ESPN makes you draft one if your league has a defense as a requirement, but if you're in a league that doesn't make you draft one, I would just not draft one, wait till the right before week 1 and then stream a good matchup and just play the matchups all year. That's usually what I do in leagues, and that usually tends to work out because the defenses, even if it's not as good a defense, if they have a great matchup, they usually do just as good or better than the elite defense who doesn't have as good a matchup that week.
You are watching the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing here with Spencer the Guru. Jerry has checked in. Good afternoon, Jerry. And by the way, if you have just checked in, if you want to join our bet.nola.com listener fantasy football league, let us know in the comments. First, the next 5 people who drop a comment with their email address or Twitter handle or some way to get a hold of them are in. It's free to enter. There will be prizes of some sort. Can't say exactly what they are yet. We're going to get Caesars involved, or we'll get some NOLA.com prizes involved. There will be prizes at the end of the year. We'll talk about it every week here on the Fantasy Football Roundup. If you would like in on that listener league, drop a comment with your name and your contact info. And we'll keep marching on, talking about some guys that you're following and guys that you're fading, Spencer. Guys, we talked about tip number 3, don't be afraid to reach. Here are some guys that you would be willing to reach for. And we're going to start with quarterbacks and running backs. And I think the name at the top of the list is one pretty familiar to everybody around here.
Yes, indeed. Joe Burrow. Yeah, I mentioned him before. He's somebody that he seemed like he slips a little bit because he didn't have quite the season numbers of like Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, but he showed in the second half that he's capable of hanging with those guys. And I think this year he won't be too far behind. I mean, he's got all the weapons you could need. Chase Higgins, Boyd, a great running back, and Joe Mixon. And most importantly, they beefed up the offensive line where he'll have more time to throw. So I'm thinking we've yet to see the best of Joe Burrow. And then Jalen Hurts, I really like as well with the addition of A.J. Brown. We know he's going to run a lot. And these running backs here, Najee, somebody I target early on. Usually a lot of people are fading him because of the Steelers offense, but I'm not worried about that. I think he'll do just fine without Big Ben. Big Ben, I don't feel like some great bonus to his fantasy value. If anything, he might do better with the new quarterback. Same with Javonte Williams, upgraded QB with Russell Wilson, should be a more explosive offense there in Denver. Same with Travis Etienne, new coach, and Doug Peterson. I feel like, in better offenses, these running backs will have more touchdown goal line opportunities, and we all know how valuable those goal line carries are. And that's a good segue into A.J. Dillon because he's a big back who I think is going to be the main goal line back in what's usually a high-powered offense in Green Bay.
All right. We have a Horace Urquhart. Do we need his contact info, or you got that, Spencer?
Oh, that's my dad. And he said he's
all right. I think we got your contact info, Mr. Urquhart. I
Yes,
think we're
we
good to
got
go.
you.
So you may be able to beat the Guru and the Guru's dad in this fantasy football league. If you want
Yeah,
in,
we have to
drop
get
a comment.
Kyle in there too. I know
Yeah.
Kyle loves to talk and thinks he knows
Bragging rights
everything.
in
So.
the
Yes.
family. Listen, if your dad beats you, you're gonna have to become Guru Junior or something. That's just how it is. That's just the stakes in this league. All right, other guys to target, other guys that you are willing to reach for at wide receiver and tight end.
Yep. Yeah, Michael Pittman, I really like this year because with Matt Ryan, upgraded quarterback, I think he's gonna have a career year, being that he'll be the focal point there of what should be a little more pass friendly offense. Allen Robinson too, another one with he's on a whole new team plus a new quarterback. So I'm thinking that he'll definitely bounce back from last year when he was stuck on the Bears, and then
Those
Gabe
two
Davis.
guys, Spencer, I'm sorry. Those two guys have been raving about their quarterbacks all preseason and how much different it is. And so if you read anything into that, Pittman and Robinson both are in line for big jumps.
Right on. Yeah, they definitely are. And then Gabriel Davis is he's a same quarterback but better situation. He'll have more opportunities for targets now as the number 2 in Buffalo. And then Chris Olave, really like Olave. He's my favorite rookie, and I think his deep threat skill set's gonna mesh really well with Jameis. And the tight ends, Schultz and Komet, really like Dalton Schultz. Feel like he's the ideal tight end target if you miss out on the elite options. And then Komet, if you can't get Schultz, I like getting Komet late. Somebody's got to catch the ball in Chicago, and I feel like outside of Darnell Mooney, he's their number 2 receiving option. So I'm thinking he's a great target there late. And a fun fact about him, not really fun. It was a kind of a crappy fact of had no touchdowns last year, but I'm not worried about that. I feel like that's going to go up to at least 6 this year because Jimmy Graham's out of there. Jimmy Graham was kind of I know we talk about goal line pests for running backs, but he was kind of like the goal line pest at tight end, but he's gone now. So Komet should see his numbers spike.
You heard it here first. Cole Kmet, at least 6 touchdowns, says Spencer, the Guru. And I especially like those top 2 picks, as I said, Pittman and Robinson. Just have been raving about their quarterbacks. Obviously nobody's going to badmouth their own teammate, but when you hear stuff like that, they don't have to be going and saying how accurate Matt Ryan is and how great it is to be working with a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. Like, these guys mean it, and to me that means if they stay healthy, they're in line for big seasons. Now, guys who may not be in line for as big of a seasons as the experts think, guys that you are fading. And again, our disclaimer here, Spencer, this does not mean you would never, ever, ever draft any of these guys because some of them are very good players. You're just not drafting them as high as most other people. And so chances are you're not going to end up with any of them because somebody else will take them first. But let's start with running backs and quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah, I would. I'd stay away from Kyler Murray. Because I just feel like he's very volatile, and he's in a good offense, but he's injury prone as well, and he didn't run as much last year. So then a lot of times he still goes up near those elite quarterbacks. And to me, I think Joe Burrow is a much more trustworthy option than him. Yet I see Kyler generally going well above Joe Burrow, just like Aaron Rodgers. I see going well above the likes of Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. Even though I think this year Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins could easily outdo Aaron Rodgers. I know he's a 2-time MVP, but with no more Devontae Adams and them shifting to more of a run-first approach, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I don't see putting up the numbers he has the past few years. And those running backs that I'm staying away from are not all age. The first 2 are aging backs, Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott. Henry, I think he'll still do pretty well when healthy, but he's getting to be more of an injury risk, and in PPR, he just doesn't have much receiving upside. Zeke is just becoming an injury risk every year. I know he played all the games last year, but he was banged up half the year and just wasn't himself. J.K. Dobbins coming off a torn ACL, so I'm fading him coming off the injury. And then Antonio Gibson is just tumbling down the depth chart. He should still be the starter week 1. I think a lot of it is they're trying to make a point to him to try to work harder or whatever. But with Brian Robinson there, I just don't see Gibson getting his usual workload.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's about opportunity, not necessarily about talent. And you got some injury-prone guys. You got some guys who have competition for that top spot, and so those can be danger spots for sure. On to wide receivers and tight ends, Spencer, that you are lower on than the industry consensus.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle is kind of Tyreek Hill too, but more so Jalen Waddle, because Miami offense as a whole I'm fading, and Waddle's a name that I'm really don't like because I think with Hill there, his role is going to decrease a lot. Kind of like the way Brandon Ayuk's role decreased last year whenever Deebo Samuel was healthy. So I just don't see Jalen Waddle, being a consistent option. I think he'll have his good weeks, but I don't see him being the consistent option that where he usually goes in like the third or fourth round that you'd need him to be if you're taking him that high. Same goes for DK Metcalf with the bad QB situation in Seattle. I just don't see him putting up his usual numbers. Same with Amari Cooper having to work with Jacoby Brissett for over half the year, and then Deshaun Watson, even when he comes back, might not be his old self. Don't like the Browns passing attack at all. And then Michael Thomas, I know a lot of y'all are gonna hate me for this, but I'm not feeling good about Mike this year, especially for fantasy, because coming off that ankle surgery, he's already got a little nagging hamstring. I feel like that's gonna be the theme this season. I hope he can play more games than he misses, but I'm very concerned that the injuries are going to creep up, and as a result, I'm not touching him for fantasy. Same thing with George Kittle. Some people jokingly call him George Brittle because he misses so many freaking games. And then Darren Waller is more of an opportunity thing with Devontae Adams there. I don't see him getting his usual targets.
Yeah, it's interesting. Michael Thomas, has looked great when he's practiced, according to all reports. Still haven't seen him in a game yet. I have my doubts we'll see him Friday simply because he does have the nagging hamstring injury. I think if we do see him, that's a good sign. But as you said, if you could get Michael Thomas as a bench guy or a flex guy or something, he's probably worth the risk. But he's going higher than that. He's going to where you'd have to draft him to be like your wide receiver 2. And that's an awful risk to take on when we just don't know. We just don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy. So, it's not an argument against the player, Michael Thomas. It's an argument against the availability of Michael Thomas.
Yeah, and I decided not to pick on your boy Trey Burks anymore because I looked his ADP's gotten so far down to where it's like most of the rankings have adjusted it to where it's like he's not going to be way up high like he was before. So
yeah, and that's probably fair. I mean, look, he hasn't had the opportunity yet. We don't know exactly what the Titans' offense will look like, but talent-wise, again, if I can get him low, I'm taking a flyer on him. There's a hint for those of you who are in the Fantasy Football Listener League with us. If I can get my hands on Treylon Burks late in the draft, I'm doing it. If not, you better take him from me. If you want to get in the league, drop a comment, drop your email address, your Twitter handle, some way to get a hold of you, and you can be in our bet.nola.com Listener League. Next 5 people will fill up our league. If not, maybe we'll look for some signups on Thursday's episode of Bayou Bets or in the newsletter. We will fill up that league one way or the other. Moving on, sleepers, quarterbacks and running backs. Again, now this is the first list. Remember, was guys that you are willing to reach for, Spencer. So now we're talking later rounds. We're talking, you're just filling out your last couple of bench spots, and these guys could pop later in the season for you.
Right. Yeah, these are guys that I definitely try to target in a lot of leagues because, like you said, they could really be league winners. And you can get them late. Trey Lance and Kirk Cousins I mentioned earlier. I like pairing these two up. Like you can get them both together late. Like you get Lance in the 10th, Cousins in the 12th type thing, and then have them to where, if Lance struggles early, you got Cousins. If Cousins gets in a slump, maybe by then Lance will be firing on all cylinders. So I feel like if you're going to wait on QB, try to have a combo of a young gun and a veteran. And then these rookie backs here, Pierce, I know we talked about yesterday as a potential offensive rookie of the year candidate. I doubt he'll reach that, being that the Texans were literally the worst running game in all of football. I mentioned that on my piece on them yesterday. Or that's up, actually going to be up today. I wrote it yesterday. It'll be up today on the Texans about a little preview. And then that Pierce is I like him, but just temper your expectations because that backfield is literally the worst backfield in all of football. And Isaiah Pacheco, really like him. I think there's a chance he could steal the job from Clyde.
Yeah, well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a fantasy mystery ever since he got into the league. You just cannot count on the guy. And you give away all your secrets. It's going to be an interesting league, I'll tell you that much. If everybody's following Spencer's advice, we'll see.
Yeah, that's the
who fades and
challenge,
who
man.
follows Spencer.
Everyone takes my guys a lot of times. It's like I end up with a team a lot of times I don't like as much because I give my secrets away. So a lot of times I don't get exactly how I like it, but that's part of the challenge, I feel like. So yeah, let's run that league, man. I'm really excited.
But hey, it's free. It's free to get in. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I still want to win it though, you know.
Well, hey, believe me, I get in the league. I don't care how what's at stake. I'm going to get competitive with it.
Facts.
All right, wide receivers and tight ends to pick in the late rounds, and this will make Saints fans happy.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry, it's kind of make up for my Michael Thomas doom and gloom. I think Jarvis Landry is gonna really pop this year, being that he's in a better situation in Cleveland. I think with the Saints, he'll be fairly consistent. I don't see him being like a star. He was never really a star. He was always just like that consistent slot presence, like in Miami. I think he might get a little more back to that as far as being a little more productive now that he's with the black and gold. And then as far as rookie late rounders, I mentioned him earlier, Romeo Doubs with Green Bay. He's expected to see a much bigger role than any rookie has recently under Aaron Rodgers, because somebody's going to have to step up without Devontae Adams. And I feel like it's probably going to be him because Christian Watson's been behind, and I think Watson maybe in the second half. But right now we're trying to get guys that are going to produce right away. Watson's a guy, if he can afford to stash him, then cool, but probably wouldn't recommend him because you're probably going to end up dropping him after a week or so if he doesn't produce. And then Irvin Smith and David Njoku, really like both of them. Irv, more of an upside play, and Njoku, a little more of a floor play. Somebody's got to catch passes in Cleveland. And then Irv, we know how much potential Minnesota.
Might have lost you just at the end there, Spencer. But yeah, Njoku, hey, listen, especially if Deshaun Watson is not playing for 11 weeks, those sort of safety valve tight ends are, for a guy like Jacoby Brissett, like that's who he's going to target, because you can't trust a guy to throw downfield a lot. So he's, dump offs to the running backs and the tight ends.
Yeah. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back. I think it was just for a second you cut out there.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. And Njoku, man, it's not a sexy pick, but it's somebody that you can get him late. And actually in a league, I got commit. I normally don't take a backup tight end, but Njoku was still there. I was like, you know what? I'll take a chance in case commit flops.
Yeah. And that's another sort of draft strategy, isn't it? Where if you've got a starter that you're not super confident in, that's the spot where you might want to back up. You have two options. You talked about with Kirk Cousins and Trey Lance. If you do have a starter you're super confident in, one of these top tier running backs, you may be better off getting a handcuff for those guys. So if you get a Dalvin Cook, get an Alexander Madison just in case Cook should get hurt, because that's really the only risk with a guy like Dalvin Cook.
Right. Yeah. Some backs don't have a clear cut handcuff, but yeah, ones that do, like Dalvin Cook and Madison, Chubb and Hunt, although Hunt a lot of times goes higher than a typical handcuff. There's not a whole lot of that. I mean, Cook and Madison's the main situation with that. A lot of these backfields are pretty muddy as far as who the backup is. Jamal Williams, that's a good handcuff, for DeAndre
Alvin Kamara
Swift,
and Mark Ingram would be an example of one too.
Yeah. There's just some of them though, like Ingram. It's like, man, he looked so bad last year to where it's like some of these handcuffs, it's like you take them and it's like you hate holding on to them, because it's like, even if the starter does get hurt, if the handcuff stinks, it's like, why'd I even hold them? So take handcuffs here and there, but don't go crazy with it. I see some of these teams where they have like 2 or 3 handcuffs. It's like, you don't need all that. Limit it to just 1, maybe 2.
That is that's good advice. That's tip number 6 from Spencer the Guru. We went through the first 5.
Tip.
That's right, at the beginning of this show. And that's it for us today. I think we'll come back next week with a little bit of a longer draft preview. We'll go back through your rankings, and then we'll be set for the NFL season to begin after that. In the meantime, if you would like to get in on the bet.nola.com Fantasy Football Listener League, drop us a note. Or if you're subscribed to our bet.nola.com newsletter, you can reply to that as well. Next time it'll come out is Thursday morning, and we'll have a little plug in there for the league as well. So we'll take 10, we'll take 12, we'll see what we can get, and have a lot of fun with it. Update the standings on the show every week, and really just hopefully get some cool prizes to give out as well. So, and by the way, Spencer, I'm sorry, but you can't win the trip to Vegas if you win the league. You're ineligible. It's going to go to the top listener finisher. So don't worry about having to beat Spencer. You can steal his strategies and beat him, and then you'll get a trip, a Caesar trip or something. We'll see what we can get from him, but it'll be cool either way. Spencer, it's almost that time.
Yes, indeed. Yep. Only a few more weeks and it's about to pop off, as they say. It's going to be really fun. And just, I mean, so many leagues again, but this one, I'm definitely going to spend a lot of energy on this one because we're going to be talking about it every week. Can't wait to go to war with the listeners here on bet.NOLA.com and see who's really got the fantasy isms for this year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Let's do it. Send us a note if you'd like to sign up, and we will get a listener league together. For Spencer the Guru, I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you next week on the Fantasy Roundup, 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon.